people do this with their parents, and it's a valid choice, but often it's just a default. It's not really a choice. It's all we can think to do. And so the minute you even start asking questions about this thing that you've been taking for granted, thing that you've been basically saying it is what it is, but you've never been asking why is it the way it is, something shifts. And if you can ride out the bumps, something starts, the lighting shifts. You can see things differently.
Welcome to Better Than Podcasts. My guest today is Daniel M.F.A. Daniel M.F.A. is a lyricist who's written for Broadway. He's got a number of credentials to his career as a lyricist. He also has a degree in both philosophy and psychology. And something that I'm very interested in trying out sometime is, I believe it's called A Walk with Daniel, and what he performs, what he calls mental chiropractic work. I think that's how he described it. I originally wanted to talk with Daniel because he has Lyrics to Go, the Lyrics to Go channel on YouTube, and he breaks down the meaning of the lyrics and the music behind it and the artists creating the lyrics, and just kind of showcases how important lyrics are in the music that we listen to today. And I wanted to talk with him about punk rock music, but we never got around to it because we just had such a great conversation getting to know each other. This is, we had spoken once before, but this we had a good solid hour to sit down and chat with each other, and it was just a really nice talk getting to know him. I hope you guys enjoy this. Check out Lyrics to Go, and I don't know, maybe we'll get back together and talk about punk rock music some other time. I want to talk about the esoteric wisdom of punk rock music, but in the meantime, here is Daniel M.F.A. Tell me about mental chiropractic walks, Daniel. That sounds fascinating. I want to hear about this.
Have we started already?
You know how I do this? I don't do an intro or anything like that. We're just two buddies having a conversation, and then I make my editor put it together so it's interesting.
Yeah. Sweet. So, I do this thing called Walk with Daniel, which I've been doing for, what is it? I guess almost 3 years now. And it is not therapy. Well, I'll back up. So I take walks with people, and I used to take them in person if I happen to be in the same city. So I've taken walks in New York with people. I've taken walks in Victoria and in Vancouver or wherever I happen to be. Usually, though, it's always been over the phone or, internet audio. And so that's what I'm doing full time whenever I do it these days since COVID started. So they walk, I walk, and what they bring, what a client brings to the walk is something that's stuck in their lives. And the goal, the intention is to get unstuck, whatever that takes. Now, it's not therapy. I'm not helping people with their big capital I issues. So if someone says, I'm stuck on my daddy issues, I'll say, we'll go see a therapist. That's not what I do. And a lot of people come to me because they've seen my videos with my dad or some other avenue, through him. And not everyone, but many. And I have to tell them, I'm not Gabor Jr. Trauma is a fact. And I certainly have my own emotional injuries, and I don't try to avoid that stuff. But in terms of getting unstuck right now in the present with something someone is dealing with, I don't find a lot of value in being like, well, so what happened to you when you were 2? The only respect in which I go there is to say, hey, whatever you're struggling with now, you come by it honestly. Mm-hmm. Like this didn't come from out of nowhere, and this is not the first time, which helps depersonalize and decouple the situation. It helps make the situation seem less particular than it is. Like, this is just a phenomenon called being stuck, and I've been stuck like this before. Oh yeah, this is my thing. So we can take it a little less seriously. And so that we can deal with it with a bit more lightness and hopefully get some breathing room. I'm talking around all this. I feel like I'm rambling, but
No.
I call it mental chiropractic for a reason, because the aim is to get things into alignment, and not alignment in the abstract sense, like not alignment with the universe or with the stars or with some abstract concept, but to actually get the mind aligned the same way a spine would be aligned. So a spine has a ideal, optimal, natural resting state alignment, right? And a chiropractor or a back specialist would know what that is, and would help a person identify what's in the way of that alignment, what's kinking it up, what muscles are tense, what vertebrae are compressed. I don't know. I'm not actually a spine expert, right? But I think the mind has a similar structure in that when we are aligned, when our thoughts, emotions, actions, beliefs, assumptions, theories, perceptions, interpretations are aligned, and awareness are aligned with our core intentions, like what we're really here for, what we really deeply, it's not even what we want to do. It's like
what your purpose is,
what we're called to do, exactly, and who we're called to be. When all of those things are aligned with that, things work. Things don't always go our way, but we can deal with what comes in a resourceful way, because we're connected to the maximum array of our resources, our creativity, our humor, our perspective, our wisdom, our name it, right? When things are out of alignment, when those different vertebrae, if you will, mental vertebrae, are like compressed against each other and going off in different directions, all of a sudden it impinges on our ability to, quote unquote, be our best selves. So
yeah, you start getting nerve pain.
You get nerve pain, and sometimes it shows up as actual physical nerve pain, but mental nerve pain is just as excruciating as the physical, because you can't, and the worst of it is you can't identify where it's coming from. It's like, God damn it, where, it's like an itch you can't scratch. When people are stuck on a situation. Well, why don't I pause there and see what you'd like to say or ask? Because I feel like that gives a pretty good basic summary of what I do.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Or not what I do, but what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I'm curious what the process looks like. I imagine that you ask them a lot of questions, a lot of why questions. But I'm also curious, how long are these walks? How, do they go until they're not stuck anymore? How did I want to know, how did the process of taking people for walks get started, and how did it become effective for you?
So that's about 3 different questions.
I know.
Let me deal with them from simplest to most, elaborate. How long are the walks? Maximum 90 minutes, usually 60. Most people go for 60. And one of the things I tell people up front is, unlike a therapist, I don't want to see you next week. If I do my job, you won't be coming back, at least not right away. Now, of course, people get stuck again, or they take new ground. They see things from a new perspective. They actually make an alteration in either the situation or their experience of it. And then at a certain point, they hit another stumbling block that they can't get their heads around. And then, so that's happened. People have come back, but I am very intentional with it, because the whole premise of it is that it's not that complicated. And that part of what keeps us stuck is one of the underlying working theories we have, is that it's super complicated. And especially those of us who have done a shit ton of self-help, we have, not just a grab bag, but a storehouse full of explanations and theories and insights and, modalities. I can explain myself up, down, left, right, and sideways, based on all the different workshops I've done and books I've read and techniques I've tried and whatever. But none of that has anything to do with getting unstuck, as far as I can tell. And it may play a role in keeping us stuck sometimes. So yeah, that's why it's, I try to keep it to 60 or 90 minutes. Only once, very recently, did I sort of grant an extension. of a little bit for reasons that were particular to that person. And it seems to work, it's like you set that intention and then you just find a way. In terms of, and then, so that leads to your other, one of, I guess, the second of the three questions, which is how does it work? Am I asking them a lot of questions and so forth? On one level, it's improvised, and another level, it has structure. So it's kind of like it's like a structured improv set, where there's going to be a beginning, middle, and an end. You kind of have a general sense of the arc of it, but the rest, I don't really have a formula. I do have some, I'm developing habits, like as I do it and I find what works. I obviously do sometimes do the same things. In fact, I often do. But the rough structure of it is that I start by kind of giving people rules of the road, rules of the sidewalk, encouraging them to stay connected to, their physical sensations as they walk, to keep part of their attention on their physical environment, especially if they're out in nature, but even if not, a building, a car, a bird, an opening, a clearing, a view of any kind, a child. It may catch your attention while you're walking. And if it does, I invite people to stop me if I'm talking and say, hey, actually, hold on, there's something here. Because it usually pertains to the issue at hand, or if it doesn't, we could find a way to make it pertain, and it's nice and physical. And then, I also let them know it's not therapy, and I let them know that I'm going to be interrupting them, because that's part of how it works. Given that we only have an hour, I've got interrupting cow syndrome, my whole life, and my family will tell you that. What's great about doing these mental chiropractic walks is I get paid to interrupt. And when I explain to people why I interrupt, most people are like, thank God. I've had so many people be like, oh, I'm so tired of a therapist just sitting there and nodding and just like, listening openly. I need someone to interrupt my bullshit and just, and it's not like I'm giving them tough love or being like, stop it, like that really funny Bob Newhart skit. Have you seen that?
I don't know which one.
I think he was a guest on Mad TV, actually, and he played a psychiatrist who a woman comes in. Right, she says, how much is it going to be? She says, I don't have a lot of money. How much is it going to be? He's like, well, most people, first 5 minutes are $10, and then you can see after that. She's like, 5 minutes? That seems really short. He's like, well, it's just how it works. Seems to work. And so she pays her $10, and he says, so what seems to be the problem? She says, I'm terrified of, I have this recurring fear of being trapped inside a wooden box. He said, okay, I hear you. What it sounds like you're saying is you have a fear of being trapped inside a wooden box. Okay, well, so you want to hear my advice? She says, yeah. And he goes, stop it. Just stop it. And that's really all he says. So I'm not quite that abrupt, because that would be really, in a sense, that's, it's got a grain of truth, but how do you stop it? If you can't find the levers and the gears, you can't see how something's working, you have no chance of stopping it. It's got you don't even have it. So the interruptions then are assertive, they're firm, but they're not cruel or critical. I'm not interrupting because I'm disinterested. I'm interrupting because I have got a good nose for when, and I wish I had as good a nose for this when I'm doing it myself in my own life. But, we are not always able to, give our gifts to ourselves as easily.
Yeah, it's easier when you're an observer, not a participant.
Right. Of course. And that's why, I can't always reliably get myself unstuck, and I need to rely on other people. But yeah, so I can hear when someone is going into story mode. There's a work, and I use this phrase working theory a lot in this work, and I'll come back to that if you like. But we have a working theory, a lot of us, that the answer somehow lies in the what happened in the story, so that we tell the story over and over again. And it's like we're a rat going down the same tunnel, and there hasn't been cheese down that tunnel in 7 days, but we just keep going down there thinking we're going to find the answer. So once I get the general gist of the narrative of like the the what's happening of the situation, then often I will say, okay, I'll interrupt someone if they keep going there, or I'll interrupt them if they are doing a lot of theorizing or explaining or getting into their head or just going off on some other tangent. And again, but the reason I can do that is because we start the walk by setting an intention together. And often that's the most important part of the entire exercise. It might take 2 minutes, it might take 15. But what it is I help the person come to an actionable, actual intention of something they want to walk toward today. So it's not a goal. So if someone says, well, my intention is to be open and to listen and to get help from you, I'll say, okay, that's your goal or that's your game plan. That's not your intention. Your intention is there's something you're looking for and you don't know where it is. It's a destination that's not on the map. And it's an experience, it's a state, it's a quality that's been missing in this situation, or a quality that would make a difference. And when people locate it, whether it's peace or clarity, or sometimes they put it in more poetic terms, which I love, it gets, the more personal and specific they can make it, the clearer it is as a beacon, as like a homing signal for me and for them. Mm-hmm. And once we have that intention, then my job is to guide them toward that intention and nothing but. So anything that's not that, all of a sudden, the minute you set an intention, a clear intention or commitment, everything that isn't that becomes clear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's what I start with. Yeah. Have you found that too?
So as you were talking, well, it sounds to me like your only goal is to hold them accountable to what their original intention was. You keep them on the straight and narrow and don't let them veer off and get off course. And again, that limited time frame helps with that, because they understand why you're keeping them on course. You don't have, like you said, you don't have to be rude or, Yeah,
I have their buy-in, which is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. One of the things about being stuck that we often miss is that it's comfortable. And there's not a lot of incentive for getting unstuck. It's a fantasy. I'd like to be unstuck. But whenever we're stuck with something and stuck with it for a long time, there are perks to that. And there's a part of the mind that has no interest in being clear of it, because then what would happen? Then I'd have a whole bunch of new shit to deal with. So to have the buy-in, the actual buy-in, and part of that is them, putting aside the time in their calendar and paying me a little bit of money. They're anteing up a little bit, but also setting an intention for themselves. Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't use the phrase holding them accountable just because of the way it's being used in like social justice circles today. It's got kind of a heavy connotation, but I would say hold us both accountable. Like, we're going to deliver on what you said. And what helps is that I'm always inspired by their intention. I'm not just like, okay, if that's what you want. I'm like, no, fuck, I want to see you have that too. Mm-hmm. So let's go get it. And then I do more than just ask questions. I guess the overall thing is to help them see how they're already seeing it. That's the most important thing as far as I can tell, not to impose or make suggestions or advice on some new perspective. The new perspective will emerge once they clearly see how they're already looking at it. We always have a point of view, but we rarely can view our own point of view.
Yeah. So I used to do personal development coaching, but I've actually given that up because I've found that tarot card reading is far more effective. And people seem to be more emotionally and intellectually invested in the reading for whatever reason. I don't know why it would be different when they're just saying, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to learn about myself and I'm going to work through some of this stuff, to get rid of these blocks or get unstuck or whatever. For some reason, you throw cards into the mix and they're suddenly more interested, I don't know why people wouldn't be interested in themselves, because they're fascinating, but
I have a theory.
Go ahead. Tell me.
And the only reason I can say this is that I am the least astrological, archetypical, like I am not particularly interested in the supernatural, the mystic, codes, symbols, all that kind of stuff. It's not that I disbelieve. I just, it's just not my orientation.
Sure,
I tend to
sure.
be more concrete. However, every summer when I go to visit my folks up on Hornby Island in British Columbia, where they have a place, there is a tarot card reader at the market, the farmer's market, where my mom sells her artwork. And once a year, I treat myself to a full reading from her. And it's always one of the most powerful sort of self-examinations I do all year. And I think it's because actually my intellect is relieved from primary duty. That it's not that I'm not interested in myself, I am, but I've been stuck on whatever I'm looking at, whether it's a relationship or a, career issue or something emotional. If it's on my mind, I've probably been stuck with it for a while. And if I've been stuck with it for a while, it means I've looked at it every which way.
Mm-hmm.
My mind, my intellect, my everything I know so much about it, and nothing I know about it is helping me. And what tarot cards get at, I don't know if the cards themselves do, but it's, the cards plus the person who's skilled at interpreting them, they get at deeper, more universal patterns, dynamics, truths about being a human being, about living in this world that are actually true.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mind has a lot of theories and a lot of knowledge, but a lot of it is kind of, so what? Like that and 5 cents will get you,
Yeah, what now? What do I
what
do with
now?
that?
Exactly. And so to take the intellect, to take the problem solving, I guess, offline a little bit and just focus on, how do these images make me feel? How do these concepts, what do these
Mm-hmm.
bring up for me? And just let again, like I said about when the mind is aligned, things just flow. It's like something gets unblocked.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually come at tarot from a very similar position as you. I'm not a particularly, I would say that I am a spiritual person, but um, I'm not into woo, like woo woo, I'm into
Oh,
like
yeah.
practical application, like, oh,
I'm into Wu-Tang, not woo-woo.
there you go. There you go. And so when I came into tarot, it was from like tarot being psychology through symbolism. That's really how I view it. And when I do readings with other people, I let them know like what is really important here is how you interpret these
Yes.
symbols and these
Yes.
colors and these combinations, and how maybe this particular character you identify with at this moment for a reason.
Yes.
These are archetypes, these are things that are deeply, deeply embedded within us that we all understand. Like you said, they're just true, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the cool thing, and this is why I think that people, I take payments online for tarot, and I'm going to call them out because I don't give any fucks. But Stripe decided that they weren't going to support my website anymore because this is almost verbatim. They do not support fortune tellers or prediction services of any kind, including tarot.
Oh, good stuff.
And I was deeply offended because I was like, I am not a fortune teller. Like, all I'm doing is allowing people to interpret these cards how they are relevant to their life. That's what I do. And
How many shitty therapists do you think run their businesses through Stripe?
oh, probably I would say 40% of them, and they are perfectly acceptable under, uh, their terms and conditions. But here's why I think that some people connect it to the occult, or they think, like, my mom was like deeply disturbed when I told her that I was doing tarot, and she's a Christian, and it's because what happens is the two people involved, the reader and the person getting the reading, something does happen where your higher self, that subconscious mind, is activated. And rather than you, like if I was giving you a reading, rather than you and I communicating with each other, it's our higher selves that are communicating. And there's something that feels very magical, even though, so sorry, even though it's really
This is called podcasting in the real world.
Oh yeah, this is my listeners know the kids. They love the kids. They're used to them jumping in. It's fine.
Nice.
But so um there's this deep psychological connection that's happening, and I think that that might seem supernatural to some people, but I think that it's completely human and completely natural.
Yeah, and I resonate with that. You know, what I'm doing doesn't sound occult, but it's the same principle that um, I'm listening. Part of me is listening beyond whatever part of them is talking. Like I'm listening into what they're saying, and I'm not
But it
figuring it out. I'm just sensing. I'm just sensing where to go, because I have a sense. I can see where they're dwelling on the topic, and I can see that where they're residing is not satisfying to them, but they don't see where else to go. And then I can look and see. So back to your question of how it started, the short answer is someone called me a mental chiropractor years ago in like a kind of a group circle processing setting. Um, and I liked that. I was like, yeah, I don't want to be a therapist. Mental chiropractor is like, just, get it in alignment and go. But I was looking for a way to use that. I was like, well, what is my calling? Like what, I mean, I have a lot of different quote unquote callings. I'm a lyricist, I'm a composer, I'm a author, but in terms of like directly working with other people and making that kind of difference one-on-one. And then one day I was walking with a good friend of mine in Victoria, where I was living at the time. And he's like, I could use your mental chiropractic skills for something. I said, sure. And he told me he was having an issue with a colleague. He's an academic at a university, and he's very collegial, and he goes out of his way to be on good terms with everyone in his department. He's quite an impressive scholar, and he's used to people responding in kind. And this person was completely a cold fish, just would not give him the time of day, no matter what he tried. He had looked at everything he was doing, everything about his approach, he had tried everything, couldn't, and it was really bugging him. It was like keeping him up at night. And he said, I'm totally stuck. I don't see how else to see this. And I said, okay, well, and this is, I just sort of invented this on the fly, but now I use it all the time. Well, first we set an intention, which I think he said was to be free, to feel free around this, like he can't change her, but if she wasn't, plaguing him in his mind, that would be great. And so I asked him, well, what's your working theory about why it is the way it is, or what it would take to solve it? Like, what's your working theory? And you don't need it. Like, I'm not looking for the correct answer. I'm looking for the honest answer. Like in your heart of hearts, in your mind of minds, how does your mind explain this and theorize about how it's going to get out of it? And he thought about it for a good long time. And he said, well, I guess if this person didn't exist, I guess that would make things a lot easier. And I was like, that's awesome. I was so excited. I'm like, you just identified that your working theory is that unless and until you get up the gumption and save the money to hire a contract killer, and come upon a time machine where you can go back and pull it Back to the Future and prevent this person's parents from meeting, I guess it's a reverse Back to the Future, then this is going to continue to be an inexorable, intractable, unsolvable thorn in your side until death or retirement do you part. He said, yeah, I guess so. I'm like, well, no wonder you're stressed with a working theory like that. Like that's where you're
going to have to kill this person. You can't.
That's such a hassle.
Or you could just realize that you don't need every single person to like you.
Yeah, but that's not going to get him unstuck. That's true, but that's not going to get him unstuck. And I don't remember, like, if he realizes it's spontaneous, like that would be an effect of being unstuck, not a cause, I think. That's an insight. But to someone who's unstuck, there's a kind of implacable armor off which that would bounce, I think. Because I tried it. I tried giving advice, like saying spiritual truisms when someone is in the midst of something. They're like, and So I don't remember what process we took. We were hiking and, you know, we talked about it for the next hour or so, but I think it had something to do with clearly seeing that what he was feeling was not about her, actually, that this was a pre-existing experience, and that he was actually resenting her for making him feel a way that he hates feeling.
And that's a lot more deeply rooted there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that there was nothing inherent in what she was doing that has the unavoidable cause of making him feel that way. He's just wired to respond that way, you know? And he reported to me at the end of that conversation, he said, oh, I feel a lot freer. And then, you know, about a week later, he wrote back, he said, things between me and her have just softened a lot. And I guess there was things about her that I wasn't seeing because I was looking through this kind of fixed narrative where I'm the victim, right? So that's it. It takes different side paths, whatever, but we always, or almost always, I can count on, I think only on one finger, the times when I really felt at the end of it, I'm like, nah, didn't quite get them there. But I've done hundreds of these.
But I think that the reason that it is possible to get there with most people is because really, like, you know, you phrase it a little bit differently, but you're just helping them remember what they already know. Like they already know.
That's right.
These things. It's just, you know, holding their hand so that they can like walk down the path, pick up the rock and see it, you know. I'm gonna pause it right here.
There we go.
Hey.
Hi.
So I do have a hard out in 23 minutes because I'm interviewing someone.
That's awesome. Who are you going to interview?
A comedian named Ron Placone.
Ron Placone, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a fan of Jimmy Dore.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
I particularly enjoy his righteous anger. I really do, because I don't think that people have enough anger right now, and he kind of supplies that for them so that they don't have to have the mental drain of being that angry.
Yeah, it's cathartic, especially when it's blended with the just the humor, just pointing out how absurd things are, because they really are. And he's very sharp at I mean, he's just allergic to hypocrisy. In, you know, among the powerful and the moneyed and the elite. And and the panelists, I mean, Ron is hilarious, and I always love watching them yuck it up with my brother. You know, it's nice to see Aaron crack up. You know, he has such a serious job. You know, Russiagate and whatever. So I think Jimmy does a real service to all of us.
We need that humor. People, I think, are more likely to accept things that they don't want to hear if it's put to them in a way that's funny, you know. So I'm thankful for him. And I've also like used Jimmy Dore as a tool to get people to understand why something's fucked up, you know, okay, but just listen to Jimmy Dore explain it. You don't want to listen to me, listen to this hilarious guy explain it.
Yeah.
He's kind of undeniable. So
yeah, enough respect.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he could retire at this point. I'm just a jagoff pothead comedian in my garage business. Like,
that doesn't really work anymore.
Because the thing is, you're not like, you're actually a very successful talk show political host who's done some incredible work. He's doing
got clout.
He's got clout. Like I know you come from humble beginnings, and I know you're different. You've distinguished yourself, you know, but like, it's a bit of a humble brag, and I don't think he needs to do that. I think he could just own what he's accomplished.
I think he's internally afraid of turning into Cenk Uygur. He does not want to do wrong by his people. So he's keeping himself in that mental state of being a jagoff comedian smoking pot in his garage, when really he's helping change the world.
Yeah, I agree. And he also has a fascination with Jungian psychology, which is a funny quirk.
Yes, and I appreciate that very much.
Yeah,
I'm glad that he's getting down that kind of psychological, spiritual road. I think it'll be good for him. It makes me happy.
Yeah.
So, tell me about, you said you're writing 2 books?
Yeah. So my father and I are.
Time?
Well, no, consecutively, but we have a two book deal.
Yeah.
My dad and I are collaborating on 2 books. One is his book, on which I'm the co-author, the sub-author, like Gabor Mate with Daniel Mate.
Sure.
And then the other book is a full-on 50-50 collab. The first one is a book he's been pregnant with basically for 10 years. And part of my job is to help him get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called The Myth of Normal Illness and Health in an Insane Culture.
Okay.
Which is kind of, it's going to be, I think, his magnum opus. I mean, it's going to bring together everything he's talked about and more, and looking at the culture as a whole and looking at how essentially unhealth is normal in our society, but we mistake normal for healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it starts with the individual, it starts really at the cellular level and looking at human development, and then looking at the family and looking at how the personality develops, and then finally looking at capitalism and imperialism and inequality and pop culture and politics and the people we elect. So it's very broad, it's very ambitious, and we are nearing the finish line on our second draft, hopefully released next year. And then the second book is called Hello Again, A Fresh Start for Parents and Their Adult Children. And that one, like I said, is a full-on partnership between us. And that one is obviously much more personal for me, and for both of us, actually. My dad has said that of all the topics he lectures on, this is by far the one he feels the least on top of, because it's always a struggle. It's always and we bring that struggle to the work. We've got a few talks on YouTube. One of them, I think it's crazy, something like 400,000 views or something. The first time we did this workshop. And you can see it because we've been doing a weekend workshop for the past 5 years before COVID. Or actually, we even did it online this past year. We're doing it a couple of times next year, I think, all going well. And you can see on stage between us, not everything is hunky-dory. And things are a lot better. I wouldn't say better, they're just richer than they were 5 years ago. And we don't have any solutions for anyone. We're just mapping out the terrain, the territory.
Yeah, how has your, relationships change when an adult child actually begins to, or comes to the level where they can begin to work with their parent? I'm curious about that, like how your relationship has evolved, because it seems to me that your dad is probably a fairly respectful person, right? But I would imagine that there's been those different aspects of your relationship that have kind of evolved since working together.
Well, what do you mean by respectful?
Well, I don't picture, and of course I don't know him. I've only seen his lectures and stuff. But I would imagine that, I don't think that he coddles you, but I think that he probably gives you credit where credit is due. And I would think it seems to me that that's part of his philosophy as far as parenting goes,
Well, but pause, okay? Because his philosophy with regard to parenting and his parenting don't necessarily have anything to do with each other.
Yes.
And that's not a poke at him. That's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to something as personal and as unconsciously driven as parenting and as loaded as parenting. And especially with a guy whose entire specialization is in how childhood trauma, or whatever you want to call it, affects people or whatever. How is he going to look at me as a fully grown adult and see me as I am now, and not as the product of whatever mistakes or whatever things he did? And let me tell you, it's no fun being someone else's mistake. It's no fun being someone else's, fault, or someone else's, the result of someone else's failed experiment. It fucking sucks. And that's not a relationship. So some people are like, wow, it would be so great to have a father who takes responsibility.
No, they're constantly analyzing you.
And analyzing themselves and all that. So that's not better or worse than anyone else. That's just what we have to work with. And what I have to work with is, not seeing him as a full human being, either having idolized him and put him on a pedestal, or demonizing him and seeing only his faults. And I can see both acutely. I'm very sensitive, and as a child, I saw what a magnificent and horrible human being he could be sometimes, or horrifying, I should say. Like he was terrifying sometimes. He carried a lot of anger. He could be very irrational. He could be very rational and compassionate one moment, and then very, flying off the handle the next. He's a human being.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
he's a human being with a particularly difficult origin story, being born and during the Holocaust.
Right, absolutely.
So, and
How
so
I
anyway, go ahead.
I just want to say I'm curious. So how, do you have children?
No,
You don't have children. So you don't have the
I do not.
benefit of perceiving yourself as a parent. So that's
Nope.
that's really interesting to me in that dynamic. But all of that stuff aside, like, how his upbringing was so very different than your upbringing. And but again, I have to come back to, like, what does working together, what has that done to your relationship?
Yeah, well, I'd say it's deepened it. It's
Yeah.
enriched it. It's put us through our paces, though. I got to tell you, it has not been easy.
What
For
keeps
several
you
years,
committed to keeping at
oh,
it?
it's worth it because it's stale otherwise. I mean, and why not? I mean, I love him and he loves me, and we really respect each other, and we're both perplexed by being stuck in a relationship that's so important to us, And I think one of the reasons I'm hoping our book will be quite unique is that, and it's kind of sad though, is no one talks about this relationship. You walk into any bookstore, there's shelves upon shelves of parenting books for, parenting children from infancy through dropping them off in college. You can find tons of books on letting go of your aging or dying parents, or healing from your traumatic childhood. Well, what about the decades in between, whether you have an estranged relationship or not? And people come to our workshops who are no longer speaking to their parents, still to work on their inner relationship to the relationship. And sometimes it shifts and sometimes it doesn't. And we don't prescribe one way or another. So I think for us and for other people who engage in this work with us, things open up, things become clearer. And when they become clearer, they become lighter and easier, and we can each be more ourselves. And then we hit the next hurdle, and it can be brutal. For years, every single time we did this workshop, the week of or immediately afterwards, we'd have an enormous fight, like a catastrophically enormous fight where I was about to say, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. It's not worth it. Life's too short, because it's easier to just get by and see people at Thanksgiving or Christmas, or in my case, Passover, and just, and a lot of people do this with their parents, and it's a valid choice, but often it's just a default. It's not really a choice. It's all we can think to do. And so the minute you even start asking questions about this thing that you've been taking for granted, thing that you've been basically saying it is what it is, but you've never been asking why is it the way it is, something shifts. And if you can ride out the bumps, whether you're doing it alone or because some people don't have a willing child or a willing parent. Some parents are in a cult, some parents are emotionally incapable, some children are hopelessly addicted. But either alone or together, something starts, the lighting shifts. You can see things differently.
I know about the light, the quality of the light shifting. I know about that. My mom, I'm trying to get her past the point right now where she just apologizes all the time. And I keep telling her, you don't have to apologize to me. I understand that you're human, and I've forgiven you a long time ago. Like, you have to forgive yourself now so that we can start to, like, build, a different dynamic to our relationship. And that's not going to happen until you can move past that,
It's interesting. In our workshop, we look at prototypes, which are kind of characters that we by default fall into as adult children or as parents. They're not personal, and they don't define who we are. But when we're in one, it's like we think that's who we are. Like we're kind of stuck in it. And one of the prototypes for the parents, which my dad also fits often, is the guilty parent. And the guilty parent is constantly trying to unburden their own sense of guilt, and in a sense using the adult child, to try and get there, but it'll never get there because you could tell your mom until the cows come home, Mom, you need to, but there's something that's keeping her stuck in that loop that has nothing to do with not knowing that she should forgive herself. And what my dad will often point out to people in these workshops is workshops is this the first time you've ever felt guilty in your life? And they'll invariably say no. And you'll say, well, when was the first time? And when you follow it all the way back, it was a long time ago, and it was probably with your own parents. You know, as children, we learn to take responsibility for our parents' emotions, you know, especially in stressed households.
Yeah.
And so we carry this burden of guilt, and guilt is like a cop on the beat that keeps you in line, you know, and then it won't let you go. But, you know, people come to see how that guilt is both keeping them in bondage, but it's also kind of manipulative shackle on the relationship too. But then the child has a part in it too. You know, there are adult child prototypes. I'm the aggrieved child. Every workshop, I like to play the Metallica song Dyer's Eve, which is an angry, dear mother, dear father, like, why the fuck did you ruin my life song? And like this sums up, do you know the song Off and Justice for All?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's actually heartbreaking and amazing. His parents were Christian scientists, and it's a real.
Who was the artist and the song's name again?
Metallica.
It's Metallica. Okay.
And the song is called Dyer's Eve.
Okay. I got to go back. I know I've heard it. I have to go back and listen.
Yeah, not one of the more famous ones, but it's the last song on the Injustice for All album.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. So, but the thing is, it can feel so, you know, the problem is that these prototypes are custom fit, so they feel really comfortable. And I can take comfort in being aggrieved. I kind of dig it, you know, when I'm in it. I don't want to let go of my grievance. But underneath every grievance, there's grief. And when you let yourself feel that, then something actually has a chance to shift.
Yeah, in the power of that strong emotion, there's the ability to transmute it. You know, you can take it and turn it into something else.
Or rather, it transmutes itself, because it's in the nature of emotions to transmute themselves.
Absolutely.
But only if we let them be, will they let us be. You know, because they have a natural sort of a half-life, a life cycle, but we often clamp down on it because we don't want to feel what's coming next.
Yeah, and when you clamp down on it, that's when it sits and festers, unseen, you know, and it pops out in usually the most embarrassing ways.
Unseen, except everywhere in your life.
Yeah. No, but you don't see it. Unseen by you, maybe seen by every other person.
Correct.
You know.
Correct.
God hates the gays, you know, but everybody else sees it. But the person who's got it festering, they don't see it.
Yeah.
I feel like I could just talk to you for like hours and hours and hours. I want to find out what else I could talk to you about, but I know you have another podcast to do.
Well, you know, I do have a YouTube show of my own that's about something that's completely other than anything we've talked about.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Are you talking about Lyrics to Go?
Lyrics to Go, yeah.
Lyrics to Go, yeah. We'll have to, this, for the listeners, this was supposed to be the esoteric wisdom of punk rock episode.
But you know what? We'll do that on my show. How about, would you like to come on and talk about that there?
I would love to. How much of the actual songs can we get away with playing?
Oh, I'll take care of that in the editing process. I play a fair bit, but you know, it's a combination of reading the lyrics out loud, and then I sort of thread through snippets where it's appropriate. I've got, you know, my channel can't be monetized. I'm relying on Patreon subscriptions because, you know.
Yeah, I don't try to monetize my channel either.
But I literally can't, because I upload it. I get copyright claims. But in the vast majority of the cases, they don't get blocked. The only times the videos have been blocked was Bob Dylan, Jay-Z, and Jewel, you know, because those people don't have enough money. So I had to do things to those videos. But in all other cases, you know, any ad revenue just goes to the copyright holders, but I get to have my video, which is all I care about.
Yeah, I've never bothered, because I like to use, I use music as like an exclamation point at the end of my episodes sometimes, you know, and I don't care. I'm going to play the full song. I want people to hear this song. This is the energy that I want on this podcast right now. And they get strikes or whatever, or claims against them, but they never pull them down. And I don't care about ad revenue. I'm not trying to get YouTube advertisers. So
the way I see it, I don't have a right to make money off of, you know, Steely Dan's songs or Metallica songs. But I do have a right to share it in my relationship with it, because music, you know, sound waves, it belongs to all of us in a certain
Mhm.
sense. It belongs to the culture.
Mhm.
And, you know, you ought to be sensitive if there's up and coming artists. I wouldn't want to use their music without permission or anything like that. But yeah, no, my entire channel is about nerding out over lyrics and looking really closely at what makes, you know,
A
the
good
contribution they make to
lyric.
songwriting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. I'll come on anytime you want. You just let me know.
Great. We'll set it
That
up.
sounds good. That sounds good. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for coming on. This was fantastic. I hope you'll come back.
I would love
And
to
talk to us.
anytime, Lindsay. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I had a great time.